The fitness world is full of this or that conundrums. Should I use barbells or dumbbells? Should I do a morning workout or a night workout? Should I focus on muscle size or muscle strength? Then there's perhaps the biggest one of all, strength training or aerobic exercise. Which one is best for you? For many people, their initial answer is probably something like, they're both great training modalities and it depends on the person to choose what's best. This might be the correct answer when determining other either-or problems, but not this one. When answering what's best for you, strength or aerobic training, there is a correct answer and this video will help you make that decision. This video isn't going to play it safe. If there's only one style of training you can do, you'll find out which one that is if you watch the entire video. With that said, we want to emphasize that in a perfect world, you'll utilize both training styles to reap maximum benefits. In fact, when looking at the recommended amount of daily activity set forth by the government health organizations, you'll see that they recommend both. Specifically, adults should be engaged in 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity weekly or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity weekly. In addition, you should perform 2 days of weight training. This balance is key to your fitness journey. As a side note, it is interesting to note that when people speak about the recommended amount of activity for health, weight training is often left out. People usually recommend aerobic training but leave out the strength aspect. It's an interesting facet and is important as we go on. Before we can make a good comparison between strength training and aerobic training, we need to isolate them and examine them as such. We'll start with aerobic training. Aerobic training refers to training done at an intensity low enough to depend on your aerobic system, with the term aerobic meaning activity that requires oxygen. This is in contrast to your anaerobic system, which refers to high-intensity training such as weightlifting or sprints. Because these styles of training are so quick, they do not require the presence of oxygen to produce energy. These processes are significantly more complicated than this, but that's the gist and good enough for this video. Aerobic training is a great form of exercise that consists of low or moderate intense exercise, primarily targets the cardiovascular system. It can occur through many forms of training such as running, cycling, or even light body movements. It improves heart health and lung capacity, as well as overall work capacity. A structured aerobic training plan will also lower your heart rate and allow you to do more work. In addition, aerobic training further provides an extensive list of other health benefits. For example, consistent aerobic exercise has immune-boosting effects and can reduce the risk of infections and illnesses. It can also aid in recovering from illness or injury by promoting circulation and enhancing nutrient delivery to cells. Aerobic training can also help you lose or maintain weight. Generally, an hour of aerobic training burns more calories than an hour of strength training, making it a popular choice of exercise for those looking to shed some pounds. However, there's more to it than this, but we'll get into that in a bit. In addition to improving immunity, aerobic training can also be a powerful tool to fight various chronic diseases and cardiovascular mortality. This makes sense as we know it improves heart health, increases lung capacity, strengthens the immune system, and helps maintain a healthy weight. These are the major players in mortality and aerobic training deals with them. And if you're feeling down, you may want to consider aerobic training. To be clear, any type of exercise can help to improve a person's mood as well as clear up signs of depression. However, there is evidence that suggests aerobic training may elicit a greater increase in mood than anaerobic. Researchers aren't sure the exact mechanisms, but they believe it has to do with simply being able to exercise longer at a more comfortable pace. Now let's get into strength training. The term strength training is given to any type of weight training, whether using a barbell, dumbbells, kettlebells, machines, or any other type of resisted exercise. Further, while it's called strength training, many people use it in a generic manner. When they say strength training, they may actually be training for muscle growth or fat loss. This is important to distinguish because if you tell a qualified professional that you want strength training, they will provide you with a program to specifically build strength. Therefore, you might not be satisfied if you really want to build bigger muscles. With all that said, for this video, the term strength training will actually apply to any type of traditional weight training that does lean towards building strength. Let's look at why you might want to choose strength training for your training routine. The primary benefits of weight training are increased muscle mass and muscular strength. While these variables are related, muscle growth and strength are two different adaptations. An increase in muscle mass is a change in the physical architecture of the muscle as it grows bigger. On the other hand, increased muscle strength improves the neuromuscular system. The quickest explanation is that your existing muscle functions better and more efficiently, allowing it to produce more force. People can accomplish this with a range of equipment such as barbells, dumbbell machines, and even body weight. Further, strength training generally puts more focus on bigger compound lifts. Common exercises are barbell back squat, deadlift, bench press, and overhead press. Many people will look at this and cut strength training short, as if these are the only improvements. Or they simply fail to realize how important it is to have big, strong muscles. The first practical benefit is that it allows a person to live a fuller life and have greater overall function and joint mobility. When you're young or in good shape, you likely underestimate how important this is. However, if you neglect this training when you're young, you will quickly learn how important it is as you start to lose joint mobility and the ability to climb mountains or ride a bike or carry groceries in one go from your car. Another massive benefit of strength training is it's going to increase your grip. At first, you may not think much of increasing grip strength. It doesn't sound as cool as a heavy deadlift or bench press. However, grip strength seems to be a very important indicator for something we should all be concerned about: our mortality. Within the world of medical fitness, there has long been an understanding that a relationship exists between a person's mortality and their grip strength. A stronger grip decreases the risk of mortality, while a weaker grip increases the risk. Researchers still don't know why exactly, they just know there's a solid relationship. Now, some people may suggest that this doesn't necessarily mean you should increase your grip strength and then magically live longer. We're not saying that either, but there is an interesting study to consider. This longitudinal study measured the hand grip strength of individuals 60 years of age or older at 3 different times: 2009, 2011, and 2015. The results were then compared to all-cause mortality. This study found that when only the initial baseline studies were considered, those with stronger grip strength had a lower risk of all-cause mortality. However, if these numbers dropped over the years, the risk of all-cause mortality increased. At the same time, if grip strength increased, their risk decreased. This applied to all persons regardless of their baseline. This suggests that strengthening your grip does in fact result in a lower risk of all-cause mortality, or at the very least further enhances the relationship. In fact, studies show that grip training can improve cognitive function by increasing the local efficiency of brain white matter connectivity. The bottom line is that there definitely appears to be a deeper connection between grip strength and overall health. And how do you increase grip strength? Well, it's definitely not with aerobic training, it's with strength training. Just about any type of workout that includes gripping a bar or a dumbbell will increase your grip. For example, bent-over rows or a Romanian deadlift. Or you could just perform chin-ups and pull-ups. Still, an ideal training program will utilize grip-specific training such as farmer carries. In addition to grip strength, overall strength is another important variable when considering all-cause mortality. Multiple studies have shown that all-around strength, whether in your grip, arms, or legs, is related to better health and lower risk of all-cause mortality. However, an interesting aspect to this is that the importance of strength seems to supersede the importance of muscle mass in terms of mortality. That is, a person who displays higher levels of strength regardless of how much muscle mass they have has lower risk of mortality. This aspect makes strength training especially important. Speaking of health, there are quite a few other benefits that strength training can provide. For one, it can mitigate sarcopenia, or the natural wasting away of muscle. Many people have heard that the body loses a certain amount of muscle every year starting around the age of 30, and things really pick up after 40. And since doctors say this, they just accept that as fact. But it's not. It is a fact if you're not involved in strength training. While people tend to lose muscle mass as they age, it's generally caused by a lack of or a decrease in exercise as they age. Further, even when a person does reach the age of 50, they can still mitigate muscle loss by being involved in weight training. Weight training basically tells the body it needs the muscle and will hold on to it. Strength training can also increase bone strength. Many people don't realize this, but your bones can increase in density and strength similarly to muscles. A stress is placed on them, which triggers repair, and they grow a little bit stronger. Technically, any overload can do this, so aerobic training could strengthen your bones to an extent. However, when compared to strength training, the absolute strength would be less. Further, only your lower body bones would receive the stress needed for growth. On the other hand, strength training can increase not only the bones in your arms, but your spine as well. But did you know that increased muscle mass can also decrease your risk of diabetes? Or having low muscle mass can be a cause of diabetes, even if a person isn't overweight. This means that even if you're at a healthy BMI but have high fat percentage due to low muscle mass, your risk of diabetes is still higher. How is that so? You see, skeletal muscle is a big player in how our bodies handle sugar. It's where insulin helps move glucose from our blood into cells, especially muscle cells. When we eat a meal with carbs, our body breaks down the carbs into glucose, increasing our blood sugar. Insulin is then released, which triggers the uptake of glucose into our muscles. So basically, your body can regulate your blood sugar levels easier with more muscle. Now, when it comes to your cardiovascular and heart health, aerobic activity will obviously have the upper hand. Or will it? This might surprise you. Aerobic training is often touted as the go-to training for increasing heart, lungs, and entire physical fitness. However, what gets lost in translation is that strength training is still going to increase cardiovascular fitness. Your cardiovascular system is simply the body system that measures how well the heart, lungs, and blood vessels can transport oxygen to the muscles during exercise. For this to improve, your body must place a greater demand on the body, but it doesn't matter if this stress comes from running or push-ups. Even though strength training is viewed as a static form of training, which simply means you're standing still, performing squats, barbell rows, and shoulder presses actually places a large demand on your cardio system. Have you ever seen someone complete a heavy set of deadlifts and not be out of breath? Exactly. Anyone who has ever used heavy weights or high-intensity training knows that lifting weights can provide an intense cardio workout. At the same time, research has shown that manipulating the variables of strength training can further increase the improvements you see to your cardio health. In 2023, researchers wanted to explore how changing the rest periods in a training program would alter participants' improvements in their VO2 max. VO2 max is generally considered the #1 fitness variable for determining one's cardiovascular system. It's basically a measure of the maximum amount of oxygen an individual can utilize during intense exercise. In this study, the researchers used 4 training regimes with compound sets or supersets with either a 30-second rest or 120-second interval. A superset is when you use 2 exercises that train different muscle groups, such as a bench press and barbell row, back to back. On the contrary, a compound set is when you use 2 exercises that train the same muscle group, such as a bench press and chest fly back to back. What's interesting is that all groups induced a significant increase in VO2 max. Still, within those 4, the researchers found that the superset group using 30 seconds of rest had the greatest increase in VO2 max. And that's not the only study. As we hinted above, most people would just assume that even if strength training can improve your cardiovascular health, aerobic activity will still be the better choice. It's impossible to give a blanket statement, as so many factors could influence the effect these training styles could have on an individual. But it's not as straightforward as you might think. Researchers examined how cardiovascular risk factors like high blood pressure, overweight, diabetes, and high cholesterol correlate with self-reported static and dynamic activities, strength training or walking/biking, in 4,086 American adults. Using data from the 2005 to 2006 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, they adjusted for age, ethnicity, gender, and smoking, and divided the participants into 2 age groups, 21 to 44 years old and over 45 years old. Among younger adults, 36% engaged in static activity, while 28% engaged in dynamic activity. Among older adults, these figures were 25% for static activity and 21% for dynamic activity. The study found that both types of activity were associated with 30 to 70% lower rates of cardiovascular disease risk factors. However, the association was strongest for static activity and among younger participants. Now, there's also another situation to consider. Let's say that you are trying to lose weight. In fact, there's a good chance that this is a goal, as a large percentage of trained people are trying to shed some pounds and improve their body composition. Which one is ideal in this situation? Most people will have a knee-jerk reaction and say aerobic. This would make sense, as people have been led to believe that running, cycling, and jumping jacks are the best ways to burn calories and lose weight. However, this isn't necessarily so, especially in our world where you can only choose one. First, you must realize that your diet is your #1 tool for weight loss. There's no reason you need to spend hours on the treadmill and burn thousands of calories if your diet is under control. Further, healthy weight loss doesn't require extreme caloric deficits. Most nutritionists would only advise a 300 to 500 caloric deficit daily with a max of 1,000. So while aerobic can obviously burn calories, so does weight training. It would not be difficult to get in a caloric deficit using a professional weight training program and a healthy diet while increasing daily activity. More importantly, when you perform a caloric deficit, especially a large one, you risk losing muscle mass. To help prevent this, you should be involved in a strength training program to help preserve muscle. Only doing aerobic training will not help preserve muscle mass, and could even exacerbate it. We now have a better idea of the benefits of strength or aerobic training. Therefore, we can take what we learned and determine what type of training we should do. There is a right answer. Again, we want to preface this in a hypothetical situation when you can only train one. Now, remember at the beginning of the video where we mentioned that many people leave out the 2 days of strength training. We are talking about the minimal amount of exercises. This is ironic because if we had to pick only one training mode, we would pick strength training. The reason is that strength training alone can increase strength, muscle size, and cardio fitness. On the flip side, aerobic training will only improve your cardio fitness. Remember that. However, it will do very little to build strength. In fact, this is where the infamous meme of an extra skinny marathon runner comes from. Aerobic training primarily stresses your type 1 muscle fibers and does little for anything else, meaning you're going to see minimal gains in strength or muscle size. The only time someone will experience significant growth is at the beginning of a training plan, assuming they are untrained. Further, most aerobic training only trains the lower body, which means your upper body will get very little exercise. Now let's look at strength training. First, the obvious. Strength training is by far the superior choice when it comes to building muscle and getting stronger. There's literally no comparison. However, remember that strength training will also improve several cardiovascular markers, such as your VO2 max. You can also alter your rep scheme and other variables to target various markers. For example, circuit training or cluster sets are all good options. Further, it helps to preserve muscle mass during weight loss. It will also improve your bone strength as well as your joints. And let's not forget that increased strength is associated with decreased mortality. Even when there are some areas that aerobic is possibly superior to, such as caloric burn or mood enhancement, strength training still has a positive effect as well. Therefore, we think the answer is clear. We also think the answer is what's interesting when people rarely talk about the mandatory strength training aspect of physical activity guidelines, because strength training is the superior training method. Now, we want to be clear and stress that this does not mean aerobic training is bad, nor do we hate aerobic training. In fact, we still think you should use both in your training, as there's likely no good reason you can't. However, our decision comes down to the numerous benefits of strength training, including specific ones that aren't really found with aerobic training. Further, strength training allows you to modify your rep scheme to further elicit more benefits. So strength training it is, and we hope this video sheds light on its vital importance. Further, we hope you see why everyone should have some aspect of strength training in their program.